Welcome back to Pulp Diction. I'm your host, Dylan Gibson, and today I'm joined by a special guest. Who am I here with?
Hey, Cody Zedeker here. Excited to be here, Dylan.
Thank you. All right. Welcome to Pulp Diction, the podcast where I talk about movies with my friends for an academic obligation. And would you like to introduce the movie we're talking about today?
Yes, we are talking about one of my all-time favorites. Uh-oh, can you hear me?
But I'm good. Just a little internet hiccup. We're good, I think.
Um, yeah, let me know for now. Well, we're talking about one of my all-time favorite movies today, La La Land.
Yes. And so if any of you don't know some way or another, La La Land is a musical. It came out in 2017, was it? And
Yeah, I think either like December 2016 or early 2017.
yeah, something like that. It's directed by Damien Chazelle, who is also known for doing Whiplash. And uh yeah, it's it's a romance movie as well, I'd say. Um Definitely a love story. And so you said it's one of your favorites. What you think it is that makes it one of your favorite movies,
Um,
if it's
well,
possible to.
yeah. It's the classic question that's hard to answer. I think I've always been a fan of musicals, but it's very easy to be turned off to the idea of a musical going into it. And I think this kind of like breaks all the musical tropes. It's not this like loud sing-songy
Hmm.
thing from start to finish. But it kind of hits on a bunch of things that I love, which is the world of Hollywood and Los Angeles. And then Damien Chazelle has been one of my favorite directors from Whiplash and uh, Babylon, and so I think it has this like magicalness to it,
Mm.
while also being like a very like real and authentic thing that's like fantasized, but the way the movie unfolds, you kind of see it that world start to like break apart.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like it's the magical aspect of musicals in general, kind of joining with the realism of this world and just how down to earth everything is. Because like just look at the characters, a lot of the dialogue and their interactions is very realistic, almost painfully so.
Hmm.
And but not just that, just like the whole thing. And you get that established from the very first musical sequence with all the people getting out from their cars and singing and dancing. Then they go back into their cars at the end and immediately start beeping at each other. Uh just like that. Which
Yeah.
I
Uh,
like if you're not immediately sold on the movie after that, then I just don't know what to tell you, you know?
yeah, it's a good point, and I'm always nervous showing the movie to someone because I'm never sure how they're going to respond to the musical elements.
Hmm.
But that first scene is like it's a oneer, so everything is meant to
Yes.
feel like it's one take, and for the most part, there's not really any cuts that I can notice aside from I think two. But they like shut down the highway to film it, and it's so like upbeat, but and the whole movie kind of feels this like upbeatness, but it there's so many layers to like it's kind of a fake upbeat because LA is full of and Hollywood's full of like all this fakeness.
Right.
But there's also like a little bit of the Southern California like liveliness in everyone, and yeah, it's so many layers even in that first scene that we could go through.
Oh, for sure. And like, yeah, and it is a oneer, and I'm a an absolute sucker for a good one take scene, even if it's like not necessarily a real one and they just use a bunch of hidden cuts. But like it's so good just for making you just feel more immersed and just totally engulfed in that whole world right off the bat. But you did say that it kind of you said it kind of subverts some musical tropes and traditions, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and it does do that like towards the the argument scene, right? Where that's where it stops being a musical for a while, uh, because the music just
Hmm.
stops when Ryan Gosling yells, and then it goes back to being a musical when Emma Stone does her monologue song audition thing. Here's to the
Hmm.
dreamers. Is that yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember if that's what it's called, but yeah, I know what you're talking
something
about.
like that. But it does a lot to that just kind of makes it different from a lot of other musicals, but it's also very like Damien Chazelle's love letter to classic Hollywood musicals in a lot
Totally.
of ways. Like there's a lot of Singing in the Rain influence in there, I think.
Hmm.
Especially that the ending montage, which that's we're gonna have to talk about that later because that's a whole thing. But just even from the start, like the font of the title card and just all the
Hmm.
the way it's edited, all these images on the screen, some of the transitions totally just evokes old school Hollywood in all the best ways possible.
Yeah, and it feels like there's a lot of mix of these. Even the costuming feels like it is pulled from. I remember my first time I had a hard time understanding what era it was set in. Like, is it modern day? Because you don't really see cell phones, you don't see that kind of thing. But then you see all
Yeah.
these like normal cars, and then but all the costumes and the some of the production design is like based off this like mix of like old and new.
Mhm.
So like the and then the influences when they're on the studio lot of like Singing in the Rain and um a lot of the things they're seeing happening is all this like blend of old and new Hollywood.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and it's just and I said it's a love letter to old Hollywood, but it's a love letter to a lot of things, right? Like just Hollywood in general. I always love movies where you can see like the love of movie making in them.
Hmm.
Again, like Singing in the Rain. Uh, but he's also doing kind of like he did in Whiplash, showing his passion for jazz and
Hmm.
love and romance and all these things. And it's just such an amazing combination of things that like every time I see it, I want to like I'm watching it this time around. This is my second time watching it, third time, and I want to take notes on it. I want to analyze it, but I'm just so like immediately engrossed in it that I don't want to like go get on my phone and start typing. I just want to keep
Yeah.
looking at it.
Yeah, and there's the like old and newness. Damien Chazelle is known for his love of jazz across multiple movies, Whiplash being kind of the pinnacle of that. But like Ryan Gosling's character is reckoning with like jazz is dying. I want to save jazz.
Hmm.
And they're like his love of old movies and Emma Stone kind of being this character who wants to be in these new movies, and he's trying to save this like dying world because you and I aren't really probably known for listening to jazz. Jazz is a popular form of music now, and they're trying to like breathe life into this like dying institution,
Right.
whether it's Hollywood or whether it's jazz.
Oh, it's so good just the way they're both trying to make their way in this industry. Like obviously Hollywood's kind of crazy to get into and jazz Gosling's trying to kind of revitalize. And it's weird because he's handed like kind of an opportunity to revitalize jazz, but he has to compromise how he perceives jazz and do something very different with it. And it's kind of this argument he has where like what is it John Legend says like how are you gonna be a revolutionary if you're such a traditionalist?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
that argument, like all the other arguments in the movie, is very interesting to me because like neither side is entirely right or wrong, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, and I feel like that's the classic. It's so hard to talk about this movie without going straight to the ending and where that plays
Right.
into it, because I think that's like one of the things that you walk away from at the ending, and where I've talked to people is like, well, was she right or was she wrong? I'll let you choose if we go down that path right now, but this like reckoning of like there's not a clear way to navigate uh in this world of kind of selling out and going this pop music route or
Hmm.
starting your own club, and how he's reckoning with these like life decisions of selling out and going corporate, for lack of a better word, and then um, or preserving this old style of jazz that he loves that every other place has gone out of business.
Right, yeah. And so you said that can like tie into the ending. How do you think that is?
Yeah, so I think in the ending, the conversation that I've always walked away with when people watch it for the first time is like, um, it's on paper it's a depressing ending. If you're
Yes.
rooting for Mia and Sebastian, if you're rooting for Emma Stone and Ryan
Hmm.
Gosling's character, but if you look at it from the other way of, well, they both got to achieve their dreams. He got to open this like awesome jazz club that he's always wanted, and then she got to be a famous actress, has a family, and like there's that moment at the end where they both look at each other in the club and they smile, and then it cuts to black. That's some have said, well, it's okay they didn't end up together because
Yes.
they got what they wanted.
Mhm. They achieved their dreams.
They achieved their dreams, and there's the romantic in me that thinks, well, I don't think that smile is them acknowledging they achieved their dreams, but I think there's this moment that they still miss each other in it, and that they had to give up all of that to do that. So it's
Right.
this like fight over what is the actual correct resolution.
Yeah.
Is it them ending up together and not going on these crazy dreams separate, or is it them doing that and ending up with the lives that they have that we see in the movie?
Like you can either fulfill your dreams or you can have this love, but you can't have both. You have to choose one or the other, which I
Yeah,
don't think is always true necessarily, but like
totally.
in a case like in the movie, it definitely is. Uh and I don't I think it's a good message. Just and the smile as well, like they can still acknowledge even after the love is gone and past, like it that doesn't mean it didn't matter. It still meant something to both of them. And the smile shows they both still think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that's the wonder of Chazelle movies is he leaves a little bit in that gray area to
There's
like figure out.
a lot to think about after the ending, like Whiplash
Yeah,
2. It's you kind of just
both.
stare at the screen, you're just
Yep. After both movies, I've been like, my eyes like have gone big, and I'm like, what is life?
just whole existential crisis.
Yeah, and I think my stance on it is there is the path that movie ends, La La Land ends, and I think that it's not worth sacrificing everything to like miss out on this really good thing that you have just to achieve your dream.
Yeah.
There's multiple philosophical things playing there, but I think the way I've always explained it to my friends is that like, well, I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. We could have seen how that story plays out together, rather than like them setting each other free to some extent.
Hmm. Yeah. And like you can think about it like that. Like they didn't necessarily have to separate to achieve what they achieved, but that's not what happened. That's not how it worked out. And you can't really change how something plays out after it's already over and done with. Uh
Totally.
so I mean it's not necessarily a bad ending for either. It's a good ending for both of them. But it is, that element of tragedy where they're they lost this thing that they had, which was you see the happiness that it brought both of them, but
Yeah.
it had to come to an end. And that
Yep.
montage at the end is just such a beautiful, like it's one of my favorite depictions ever of just like what could have been, almost like
Hmm.
500 Days of Summer, right? Like this
Yeah.
what could have been sort of thing. and just this montage of everything's happy, going to Paris, all these like frozen in time type set pieces, which also it's another bit that reminded me of Singing in the Rain, the sequence with Gene Kelly and his backstory or whatever.
Yeah, crazy enough, I've never seen Singing in the Rain, but I think with that montage, it's that world of like what could have been, and they go through that entire montage, and it's you're like thinking that like, oh, maybe this your first time seeing it, I think you're thinking, oh, maybe this is like actually what happened.
Yeah,
And that
just
like,
like a glimmer of hope.
yeah, it's gonna like snap back and they're gonna be together. But it's the whole time you're like watching it, everything you see, and it's like a set. It's like a movie set of some
Hmm.
sort. And you start to realize, oh no, this is all kind of just like a fake, like
Yeah,
them playing through this
it's
idealism in their
they're
head.
in La La Land, you know?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
oh, it's so good. It's such a good ending. And some people don't like it. Some people have started calling the movie a horror movie because of the ending, uh, which a part of me thinks that's fair because like, and it is scary to think like you could have this great love just to lose it. But like I
Yeah,
said, like just because you lose that love doesn't mean it didn't matter. And it's because they both still think about it. It and it did end up leading both of them to where they are at the ending. Just like any relationship will lead people to whoever they become in the future.
yeah. The question is, was it worth it, and is the journey worth the destination?
Yeah. I did like how I always forget that the movie's kind of separated into seasons, right? You got
Mm,
winter, spring, summer, fall. And, you know, it's a good way to show how time is progressing as it goes on. But it's also kind of like the symbolism in the seasons, I guess. Like spring is always a time for new beginnings and whatnot. And that's kind of when Mia and Sebastian begin their relationship. And summer is them enjoying said relationship. And then fall is when it falls apart.
hmm. Yeah, I've never been great at deciphering those seasons, and I like the way you put that. Of it kind of shows the different seasons that they're experiencing together, and uh the idea of summer is the like happy-go-lucky part, in that almost like the honeymoon period of the relationship is there's that like three
Totally.
month period when dating someone that just like feels really good. You have even like with a new job, when you start a new job for like 3 months, you're like, oh, this is great. And then you start to realize, oh no, my boss is like kind of mean, or my I don't like the work that I do. And same with like school, it can feel really good until things start to kick in full gear and you
Just
start to
everything
see the full
piles on
cracks.
and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You see the cracks. And, you know, they see the cracks in their relationship eventually. And maybe it could have worked out for them, but again, it didn't. And just so much of how Chazelle portrays their relationship is just like it gets me just every time. I'm amazed at how just
Yeah.
awesome it is. Uh I like I mean his use of color in the movie. Let's talk about that for a
Amazing.
second because
Amazing.
I don't there are very few directors quite like him that just have that mastery over color in the frame. Because like
Yeah.
I think I noticed red was a very prominent color throughout. Like just Mia would be engulfed in red light when
Hmm.
she's like for the first time when she hears the theme on the
Oh,
piano and goes into the club. And uh again when she decides to pull off onto the side of the road, which leads to her seeing the club again. And just one thing after another, just red is always kind of I'm not entirely sure what red symbolizes, if I'm being honest. I know
yeah.
like I know like sophomore year English, yeah, my teacher was like it usually symbolizes like love or anger or one of those two.
Yeah. I don't really remember red as much, just the colors all around the pastel, and
Hmm.
how that like brings to life different things. But the one big use of color that I really remember is in when she goes to the party with her friends. uh, they're trying on all these different dresses, all these like different bright colored dresses, and
Hmm.
she doesn't want to go. And then she walks into this like dark party. Everyone's like has different kind of, you see all this like pretentiousness of Hollywood, and she feels
Yeah,
like
like
life's
the writer guy. I have a knack for
yeah,
world building.
yeah, exactly. Well, this is the night party that she goes to where she gets towed afterwards.
Right.
Um, and she's like walking through the crowd. It's during the Someone in the Crowd song, and it's she's walking through the crowd. It's, you see all the pretentiousness, and you can kind of feel that she like doesn't feel like she fits in there. And then she goes to the bathroom, and it comes out, and everything's happening kind of in slow motion, and it feels like the
Yes.
like world's like passing her by. Um, I don't remember if there was red in that scene, but I just remember the like colors being very specific there of making her feel kind of like out of place.
Yeah, I think that one might have been blue, which is also like a big one
Yeah.
throughout. But
Um,
yeah, the someone in the crowd just song, all the songs are amazing. Uh, but they're all just shot so well, directed, written insanely well. Someone in the crowd, and I like the foreshadowing there too, because someone in the crowd is what eventually gets her her success, because the someone in the crowd was the casting director that got her the
totally.
movie role.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never made that connection. Yeah, it's what do you think of there's one of the musical, I don't think they're singing in it, where they're in the star, so they walk into the observatory after their date at Rebel
The
Without a Cause, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he like, it's the one time that it kind of loses its like semi-groundedness of
They
they
just like start
float in
dancing in
space.
space and stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
am so in love with that scene. It's like the way I see it was it's just a beautiful, perfect depiction of how it feels, just like in that, like you said, that honeymoon period of dating
Yeah.
somebody. Just like you're literally floating and everything's awesome and you're dancing in space. And it's
Yep.
just so beautiful and nice to watch. And it's so happy. And then they kiss at the end too, and it does that transition with the circle that just
Hmm.
closes in on them, kind of like the end of an old movie, like some happily ever after. But of course, it's not
Yeah.
the happily ever after because it keeps going.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's interesting. I remember my first time seeing it, I didn't like that. I was like, this feels like it's not real. But then
Kind of
it might have
losing
been
itself.
Saturday Night Live convinced me otherwise. There's a
Really?
sketch with I think Aziz Ansari and a couple others in it where he's like,
Oh,
they're in
the
this
interrogation?
yeah, yeah.
Oh man, it's been years since I saw that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. They're like in this, yeah, interrogation room, and he's interrogating someone about, I don't remember if it's specifically La La Land, but it's that scene, and he talks about, and he's like, "What'd you think of this?" And he's like, I think it was didn't feel real and ruined the movie." And he's like, "But it's wonderful." And that's how I feel now. I'm like,
It is
maybe it
wonderful.
ruins it all, but it's just like delightful, and captures them what they're trying to go for that first season of the movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing about musicals. It's like the songs and these dance sequences aren't necessarily like what's actually happening. It's just kind of it's more of a window into how these
Hmm.
characters are actually feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And so I can see how that scene wouldn't work for somebody if they just don't like musicals, period.
Hmm.
Uh, but like it's not, they're not literally dancing in space, you know? That's just, it's a depiction of how they what's going on in their heads and how much they enjoy being around each other.
Yep. Yeah.
But and that's another thing, because this movie, like even people who don't like musicals, i.e. Christopher Nolan, have said that La La Land is amazing. And so why do you think
Yeah.
that is, that this movie speaks to those people?
Oh. Well, I think with Christopher Nolan and anyone else in Hollywood, Hollywood loves movies that scratch their own back. And I think La La Land and anything about Hollywood is going to do that.
Right.
But I think there's something to it where it's not this in Broadway there's a specific kind of voice they want. They want this like kind of projected um Hugh Jackman style voice if you've seen Greatest Showman,
Of
and
course.
that's like what a classic Broadway musical number sounds like, but this is like infused with more jazz, and it's it's like two imperfect people. One of my friends was classically trained at JMU in
Hmm.
like vocal performance, and I remember her saying, "I don't like La La Land because they're not good singers," and I was like, "That's the
That's the
point!"
point. They're
Like,
perfectly imperfect.
yeah, it is like they're not supposed to be these like wonderful singers, and Emma Stone's better than Ryan Gosling, but you, yeah, these like non-classic vocalists are like what makes this feel like a two people that are just like falling in love and trying to like live life. And so I think people probably resonated with it more, just one because it's just all around a fantastic, like so well done.
Of
But it
course.
also like is this more real and not overproduced bits of music, despite these like large music numbers that can come with it. And it's not like every beat, especially later on in the movie, is a ton of like it's not a lot of musical songs,
Right.
like Wicked will be.
Yeah, yeah, because for a while the movie does stop being a musical. Like
Hmm.
I think I mentioned after the big dinner argument. Uh, but it's just a good story too. Like, I mean, if you're into romances, I guess, which I am, I think of myself, I'm kind of a hopeless romantic. I'm not ashamed to admit it. But it's, I mean, and we've talked just, I think we've gone over how good the story is,
Yeah,
but just so
yeah.
much about it. And it's so nice to look at too. Like,
Hmm.
there are not a lot of movies that look as good as La La Land does.
Totally. And like it did so well at the box office for being a musical. Musicals historically like underperform, and it did really well, and went on to lose the best picture Oscar, but in the tragic way that it did. But the
Oh,
uh
yes.
um yeah, I think I wasn't even like a romance guy when I saw it. I didn't really get on the rom-com train till like COVID, I think. But when I saw it when it came out in 2016, I remember being like, that was so good. But maybe the more romantic elements I didn't connect with at the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I get you. What was your favorite song in the movie, if you can pick one?
Tough. Um, I really like Someone in the Crowd because there's two different scenes. They're in the apartment and then they go to the party, and then it's like slows down and then kind of picks up as the music picks up.
Yeah, yeah, true.
And it's hard to dissociate the visuals from the music, but City of Stars is just such a classic one. I remember I met a girl that I had a crush on at the time, and like when I realized I had a crush on her, but you know what music played?
Was
It
it?
wasn't City of Stars, but it was some soundtrack from La La Land. Um, maybe it was City of Stars, and the like that like music just started playing in the back of my head after I like dropped her off, and I was like,
Oh,
what?
man.
I was like, this is gonna ruin me. What about you? What's your favorite song?
Oh, man. I mean, it's hard to pick. Someone in the Crowd is awesome. I think Lovely Night is up there for me.
Totally.
Uh, I love the choreography of it and just the way they kind of slowly start to, I don't know, become more in sync with each other as the song goes on.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the ending when they lean in and then just the note leads to the phone ringtone is really funny to me.
Yeah, this like concept of them just missing each other always.
Hmm.
And you see that there of like they're it's a little bit, it's that's the classic trope of like almost kissing, but there's I think one of the themes of the movie is like they constantly keep missing each other.
Yeah.
Um and like from the very beginning where they are in the on the freeway versus them like in the bar like missing each other. And
Yeah,
that's like a good moment of that. And then that dance sequence is just so iconic.
it is. Like you show
Uh,
people one frame, like even people who have no idea, who haven't seen anything about La La Land, they know just from one frame of that sequence, especially them doing like the arm thing.
yeah. Ryan Gosling said recently he's like mad that he flexed his like
Yeah, yeah,
hand
yeah.
down,
He did like a
and he
flip.
said he was mad about that. Um,
Yeah.
do you know the story behind how they shot that sequence?
I think I do. Like they didn't have much time, right? Because they were doing it, um, they were actually doing it on location, so they had to do it like while the lighting was still good and the sky was still looking the way it did.
Yeah, it was like that like purple-ish sunset, and I think they
Hmm.
had two takes to get it. It was like a 30-minute window. And they had to go all the way up the hill and then all the way back down as part of it. And so they shot the first one, and then like in between, I think they like needed to get it again, and in between they were like running back down. They had like their costumers like wiping the sweat off of them and like getting them ready for the next round so that they could get it before the light went away.
Man. Yeah, and of course it turned out in very, very, very well. And Gosling and Emma Stone both do a very good job, I think, for people who aren't singers, musicians, or dancers. And like we said, I think that's kind of the point. Like they're imperfect at it.
Hmm.
But a part of me does wonder, like, it could have been interesting if they had hired like dancers or singers or something, just people that are more unknown for these two roles that are like unknowns trying to make it in LA.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought of that. Part of me thinks we probably wouldn't have seen the movie if it
Yeah,
was
that's the
two
thing.
unknowns.
Like it's already pretty risky, but if you want to cast unknowns in the role, I think the executives are just going to be like, no, not a chance.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. I mean, yeah, I do wonder, but I think part of it is that they're not natural dancers or singers, and that's like
Oh, to
okay.
absolutely.
But and also just Emma Stone is so good
She
in
is.
this role, and particularly in the Dreamer song where she in the audition. That
Yes.
that makes me
Like
want
I
to.
don't think that song really clicked for me until this watch. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I've appreciated it before, but this time I think I get it. You know what I mean?
yeah, and like her acting in that scene is like I think some of the best
It's
acting I've seen
immaculate.
ever.
I
Uh,
know. Was she nominated for this movie?
she
Because
won for this
she
movie.
won. Okay, okay, I thought so.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like she deserved it. She's insanely good, and Gosling's awesome too. I don't think I've ever not loved him in a movie,
totally.
and he always manages to make me laugh no matter what. Between this, Barbie, Nice Guys, just. But I don't know. I do think Emma Stone did kind of outshine him a little. But the two lead characters are both very interesting because like I don't know, you can kind of understand both of their points of view by the end of the movie. Like
Yeah,
she's talking about him giving up how he gave up his dream, and he's talking about how that he's doing what he has to do, for the dream.
yeah, and like there's a little bit of he's he grows up. It's almost like a mature thing for him to take the gig because he wants to support her. And there's the like pretentiousness of artist of like what level do I give myself to like to pursue pure art versus to kind of like sit back and not sit back, but to not go these routes that may compromise that. And so there's this battle that artists have, and so Emma Stone kind of comes in afterwards and like, well, you're selling out, and with that pretentious mindset, and he comes in, he's like, well, I'm kind of doing this because I love you and I like need to support you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, you know, but at the same time, you see where she's coming from, and it's
Yeah,
like, well, why do you, why are you get, how can you possibly give that up? And it's another situation of like everyone, no one's right or wrong completely. But both characters, I think, are just so relatable at every point in the movie, at a lot of the points in the movie, at least. Um, and I think I do relate to Ryan a little bit more, maybe just because I'm a dude. But I have talked to girls that are like, I totally, like, I just get Mia in the movie, you know?
mm,
So, and I think that that's always interesting to me in rom-coms, romances, whatever, that like the guys just kind of get the guy characters and girls just kind of get the girl characters because it's the same. It was the same thing for me with When Harry Met Sally.
yeah. I've never dissected it like that, but I think that's a good way to think about it. Is I think I'm typically like siding with the guy character.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the more realistic, like when Harry Met Sally is, pretty realistic in terms of they're just constantly missing each other.
Hmm.
And this is almost like the inverse of when Harry Met Sally is
It
like
is. Yeah, that's
uh
true.
things go really well and then they always keep missing each other. And yeah, I think with those movies I'm typically like the more realistic that they are, the more likely I am to agree with the characters rather
Yeah.
than being like, oh, you're just this is a crazy romance movie. And maybe
Yeah.
that's the appeal of La La Land.
Yeah. And like you look at the title too, like La La Land, it's something you say when somebody's like not being realistic, when they're fantasizing about whatever. And these characters are fantasizing about uh what they want, but it's also like it is within their grasp and they do end up reaching it.
Yeah. And
Uh
part of this thing of La La Land is like the idealism in Los Angeles and particularly Hollywood is everyone kind of goes
yeah.
there pursuing a dream. And the rule of thumb there is everyone has a script or everyone's like in an audition. And so it's everyone is like kind of living in this world of like, what if I make it? What if I make it?
Yeah.
And that's good for some people, but not good for others as we kind of see that play out in their
Yeah.
lives.
So you lived in did you live in LA at some point? Yeah,
Yep.
so how do you think the movie so what do you think of the portrayal of LA? Just
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a love letter and like a satire to it. They he definitely like Chazelle has clear reverence for Los Angeles and like what it's given him, but he also kind of like parodies some of the drama of how like actors are bickering in the background when they're on the studio lot, and how actors can kind of be like self-absorbed or writers like the our world building friend. And so I think there's like that's like pretty accurate. I didn't can't say I spent much time as a college intern at some of these like large parties with screenwriters because I was 20
Right.
years old at the time. But I do think that's probably like relatively true. Is
Hmm.
this like kind of weirdness of how everyone's a little bit self-absorbed and like trying to make it, and that's like what everyone's concerned with. Some people are more narcissistic about it, and then some are more keep it closer to their chest. It kind of just depends on
Yeah.
personalities, but there's like an obsession with making it.
Yeah. And you do kind of see that you do definitely see a lot of that self-obsession and narcissism and whatnot and just being humble throughout the movie. I thought it was interesting towards the end when Emma Stone goes into the coffee shop where she used to work
Mm,
and like they're like it's on us and she insists on paying anyway. Like you kind
yeah,
of see in that in just a moment like she's kind of retained a bit of that humility that came with working at a coffee shop.
yeah, totally. But I think like moments like that of her when she starts at working at the coffee shop, like that's what so many of them are doing. And I remember when I worked there, when I worked at the studio, one of the guys I worked with said he's like, for every one story of Harrison Ford making it, I think he like waited tables till he got Star Wars when he was late
Hmm.
30s or
Well,
40.
he was a carpenter, I believe.
Yeah, but he probably did that for 10, 15 years before he got the looks he did from George Lucas. But for every
Hmm.
one story like Harrison Ford, who does that for 10 years, 15 years, and then makes it big, there's like 100 others of the same person who did that for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and never like made it or only had some like background roles on CSI Miami or
Oh,
something.
definitely. Like there's it's a very much the industry of Hollywood is very much like there is a big luck factor to it, I think. Uh and like the odds are not great for most people. It's very dependent on having like connections and stuff, probably. And the movie's kind of, you know, there is a cynical edge about it, but I think it is like fairly optimistic in that it tells you like, hey, if you work at it and try hard enough and then you can really, make it and do what
Yeah,
you want.
yeah, definitely. There's definitely like a good mix of like hopefulness in uh the despair of Hollywood.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about the color in the movie. I like their outfits towards the beginning. Uh just the brightly colored like Mia's dresses,
Mhm.
the bright yellow, and she has the yellow with a red purse, and at that same party Sebastian is dressed in red and yellow. And
Oh, interesting.
they both start out just wearing these basically solid blue outfits and just kind of coordinating with each other in that way. Uh, but then towards the end, they are both wearing blue again, but it's like she's wearing this kind of muted, pale blue, and he's wearing a more dark, uh, still kind of muted blue. And the way I
Yeah.
saw that was kind of like they are still sort of in sync, but they're no longer like totally compatible, I guess. I don't
Hmm.
like it's just not working anymore.
Yeah, that's a good realization on like their uh the color hues that they're wearing. I don't think I ever noticed that, but yeah, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff on costuming that I wonder if like Chazelle's ever done like a video on where he talks
Hmm.
about why he chose certain things. But yeah, it's so interesting how the clothing of like all these characters always affects the way we're viewing them. We just don't really see that as
Oh,
much as we would
yeah,
see like
there's
the
definitely like a
lines.
subconscious impact on that.
Totally. Now I feel like I'm gonna want to rewatch it and think of all the colors that they're wearing and
Yeah.
when they like match and when they don't.
I mean, it's such a rewatchable movie, and I feel like every time I watch it, I notice something or another. Uh,
Yeah.
and like my brother, it's his favorite movie like ever. He's seen it like
There
four
we
or
go.
five times at least. Um, and the first time I watched it, like the first time I sat down and watched it, the first time I technically watched it, I was in the middle of a breakup, so I wasn't really focused.
Not a great breakup movie. It's a
No,
sad one.
no. I mean, it is kind of fitting when you think about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, the first time I really watched it, um, I'm watching it with him. It's his second or third time, and I'm noticing things that he hasn't even like thought about. Not to toot my own horn or anything,
Yeah. Yeah. There we go.
but
Cinephile.
like I liked how when she's in the restaurant with her boyfriend or whatever, like pre
Hmm.
Sebastian, and she starts hearing the piano notes from the speaker, right? And the
Hmm.
exit sign is right by it, like it's telling her like exit, like get out, you know?
Yeah, the those music notes, the like da 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 da. That's like one of those things that I feel like is like a trigger for me, and probably a good way, but like in the same way that like the iPhone alarm kind of like gets me wired.
Yeah,
That one makes me like go into like the
like
clouds.
fight or flight.
Yeah, it's that's such an iconic piece of theme
It
music.
really is.
Um, I don't know if it's just my love for the movie or because of how good the actual music is, but the it's one of I could hear just a couple of those notes and be like,
And you're
La La
like,
Land,
La La
where?
Land, where?
It's like the ice cream man coming down my street.
Oh yeah. Yeah, slightly unrelated, but my phone ringtone used to be Darth Vader breathing, and I realized I had
Oh
to
God.
change it when somebody started watching Star Wars and he comes on scene and I'm immediately like, phone? Oh, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's
That's awesome.
Do you have anything else like you wanted to go over before we wrap this up?
I think the only other thing I could think of is there's one scene that it's so dumb, but it's been one of my favorite shots ever for a while. There's a scene when they are, I think they're like leaving the movie theater or leaving the studio or something.
Hmm.
They're like they both walk out. It's a wide shot, and they're both walking separate directions from each other. And um, Sebastian turns around first, looks at her, sees she's not looking back. Turns and keeps walking. Mia stops, turns, looks at him, but he's walking at that point. And that shot kind of like lives in my head rent free because it
Man,
is that to me that like encapsulates the movie really well. They're always missing each other. Is like
definitely.
they come out thinking both like wanting to be together, and so they walk away and but they both look at each other at different times instead of like the moment of like, oh, we're both looking back at each other.
Hmm.
Um, and it feels like the rest of the movie is where they're on these different timelines and living life separately.
Yeah, man, I've never noticed that. I'll have to keep an eye out on my next inevitable next viewing
Yeah,
because I will
tonight.
be watching it again. But yeah, I think we've been doing this for a little while. Thank you, Cody, for being on the podcast, talking about La La Land with me. It's very
Yeah,
much
pleasure to be
appreciated.
here. Thanks for having me. It was fun to get to talk about one of the all-time greats in movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll always be one of my favorites, I think.
Awesome. Well, Dylan, thank you for having me, my friend. It was a joy to be here.
All right. I'll see you around, Cody.
I'll see you.